Hello there. In this video, I want to talk about tripod statement paper. This conversation doesn't have any implementation and coding part. We will walk through a paper very fast. The paper that we want to talk about is transparent reporting of a multivariable prediction model for individual prognosis or diagnosis, which is called tripod. And why this is important. So tripod statement is a statement that developed by professional journal editors, methodologists. It said that during 3-day meeting in June 2011, they could create a list of items that we need to care when we want to write a report for prognosis or diagnosis. So that's why it's called the transparent reporting of multivariable prediction for individual prognosis or diagnosis. And it said that prognosis is defined when we um, predict a specific event that happened in the future, and diagnosis is called when we predict a specific disease or condition in present. So the paper will talk about mainly about when we want to write a paper, what factor we should consider to have a transparent reporting. And I don't want to go through the text, but there is a statement that I want to show that a statement. So they also mentioned that here. So the complete checklist is available at tripodstatement.org. So let me open that tripod statement. So when we open this website, it's show us the tripod checklist, and this is important checklist that we need to take care of them when we want to write a paper related to diagnosis or prognosis. So the first thing is title, which should identify the study as developing or validating a multivariate variable prediction model, the target population, and the outcome to be predicted. So it said that we should select the title that should identify the study that we are maybe developing or validating a multivariable prediction. And also it should include the target population and the outcome that we got. For example, if we want to create, if you want to write a paper related related to breast cancer prediction, so we should mention that we are creating a model for breast cancer, like for Middle East or for North America. So it is important to mention that what is the target population. And again, it's important to say that we are developing a system for like cancer recurrence prediction or cancer prediction. So in the abstract, we have to provide summary of objectives. What is the objective? How we design the study, the setting, the participant, sample size, predictors, what is the outcome, what type of statistical analysis we used, how is the result, and what is the conclusion. So when we write a paper, if we have this checklist, this is really helpful to understand which sentence we need to add to the abstract. So for other parts, like the background, it also mentioned different parts, like in the background objective, at first, we need to explain the context, including whether it is diagnosis or prognosis or prognostic. And rationale for developing or validating the multivariate prediction model, including references to existing models. So if we use a model, like for example, we use SVM or maybe we use ResNet, something else, we need to mention that why we are using that model. So maybe this is used by other researchers, or we have a rationality behind it. Then we have to specify the objectives, including whether the study describes the development or validation of the model or both. So in terms of validation, maybe if it is like X-ray image, we have like different radiologists that can do the annotation or validation for us. So we need to specify the objectives that we are taking in that research. So in the method, we need to mention the source of the data. That's why after, when we set title methods, it's good to have the source of the data, or we can have a subsection like materials. So in the materials and source of data, we need to describe the study design or source of data. Maybe this is randomized trial, cohort database, registry data. We need to mention what it is exactly. And after that, specify the key dates, including a start of accrual, end of the accrual, and if applicable, end of the follow-up. So we need to mention that this data set like is uh, started to be recorded from this time to this time. If it is like a survival analysis, we need to mention like how much we could follow up some patient, how many patient we couldn't follow them, or stuff like that. For participant of the research, after mentioning that how we got the data, we need to mention like how we included participant and how we exclude some of the participant, like describe the eligibility criteria for participants, and clearly define the outcome that is predicted by prediction model, including how and when it is assessed. Maybe their position can change, like maybe first we have our predictors, we define our predictors, we talk about the sample size, the missing data, and maybe then we can have the outcome, but the order can change a little, not that much. But for the outcome, we need to say report any action to blind assessment of the outcome to be predicted. And for predictors, we need to clearly define the predictors variable that we used for developing and validating the model, including how and when they were measured. The sample size, we need to mention about the sample size. Then we need to talk about the imputation if we used. And we need to talk about the statistical analysis of the variable, like what is average age of participants, stuff like that. And we need to describe how predictors were handled in the analysis and specify type of the model. All model building procedure, including any predictor selection method for internal validation. So specifying all measures used to assess the model performance, this is very important. And if relevant, to compare multiple models. So if you want to compare models, we need to use appropriate method. It's not just comparing the accuracy, or maybe just comparing the AUC or other metrics. If you want to compare two methods, we need to do some statistical analysis for it. So I will talk about the START paper in another video, but in the tripod, it just mentioned that we need to specify all measures used to assess the model performance. And another thing is if we have risk groups, so we need to provide how risk groups are created. In the result, we need to again talk about the flow of participants through the study, including number of participants and without with and without the outcome, and if applicable, a summary of the follow-up. Diagrams can be used in the results, and specify number of participants that is used for each analysis, and report that how is the model specification. Like if it is a regression, we need to show the model intercept, or if it is a survival, we need to show the survival at a given time point. And we need to, after that, explain how to use the prediction model. So if you have code published somewhere, and like if we have some limitations, like when we got the features, maybe there are some restrictions, so those features need to be recorded in a specific condition, stuff like that. To get those results, you need to justify that. So the main things in the transparent reporting is that it should be repeatable. So finally, we need to report the performance measures. Yeah, the discussion also has limitation, interpretation, and implication. So for limitation, we need to discuss any limitation of the study. Like we have few samples, we had lots of missing data, maybe we had lots of imputation, and other limitation, like we had resource limitation for training a bigger model or stuff like that. For interpretation, we need also interpretation to justify the model, like how results are related to the objectives. So for interpretation, we can use like model interpretation, like GradCam, the Shapley value, stuff like that for interpreting the result. We can use some relevant evidences to support that, like maybe counterfactual example or stuff like that can be used just for justifying the outcome. And in implication, we need to discuss the potential clinical use of the model and implication for future. So what we can do for the future. And finally, we will have the supplementary and the funding. So this list is the result of the paper tripod. As I know, they are still holding different meetings during 2020. Maybe a new updated checklist of tripod will be published, but as we know, most of the journal recommendation are following this list. So if you see any paper in diagnosis and prognosis for clinical diagnosis and prognosis, and you see that some of these factors missed, it means that they are not following the tripod and they do not have enough transparency, and maybe the research is not repeatable. And yeah, this is very important. That's why I just decided to talk about this, because I've seen many papers coming without considering these style. I also repeatedly refer to this checklist when I'm writing a paper to be sure that I'm following the right direction. Thank you and have fun.